Hi, I'm Dr. Abha and I'm a faculty and area chair of business communication at Jaipuria Institute of Management, Lucknow. This is the placement season going on, and a lot of students have this question in mind as to how should they answer this question, tell me something about yourself. And there's a very fundamental question, no matter which JD or which organization, this question is certainly going to be asked. So I'm going to tell you certain do's and don'ts regarding this question and how you can frame a suitable answer for this question when you're asked, tell me something about yourself. So the moment somebody's asked, tell me something about yourself, I think first thing is that it brings in a lot of anxiety, no matter how well you know yourself, but still when you have to frame an answer for this question, it's very tricky. So let me just lay down certain fundamental rules with the help of which you can frame a very professional answer for yourself. First thing is that don't prepare a standard answer and appear for all the job roles. I think customizing your answer as per the job description is very, very important. What many times students do is they prepare a standard answer, and for every organization, for every JD, they just memorize the same answer and articulate the same. I think that is one of the biggest blunders which students do. Second thing is, I have been interacting with so many HR professionals across pan-India, and what they say is that the students haven't researched about the organization. When they come for the interview, they don't know anything about the organization, or even if some students do know a little, then it's a very surface level information about that organization. So research about the organization in detail, find out what are the new things happening in the organization, what is something new, read the news, read the current updates from the website, and then be prepared. So be prepared in terms of being thorough with your CV, what have you written in that, and then all that you have done in terms of your SIP or educational qualification or work experience. I think being thorough with all these things is again a very important requirement for this question. When you are talking about yourself, so generally there is this doubt as to what I should include in the answer to this question. So I feel that you can start the answer to this question with telling about your strengths, or telling about anything that sets you apart from other candidates, anything that makes you different, that makes you unique, that makes you so inimitable that the moment somebody listens to your introduction, the person gets convinced, the person finds you very passionate and appropriate for that job role. So start with something unique, some strength of yours, something that sets you apart, and then you can include a bit of information about your family background, because some recruiters may also be interested in knowing about your family background. But then again, the question is, how does one talk about the family background? So nobody is interested in knowing in detail about the family, or how many members, or what does each member do in the family. I think in the family background, you just talk about where who all are there in the family, and the most important thing should be what is it that you have really imbibed as a member of that family. So not necessarily you have to name every person of the family and tell them that I have learned this virtue or this quality from my father and then mother and other sibling, etc. Overall, the qualities, the things that you have learned from your family, you can just highlight that, because that will help the recruiter in understanding the kind of person you are, because throughout your self-introduction you'll be claiming the kind of professional you are, and how can you be a value add through that for any organization. But when you talk about your family, that tells to the recruiter about the kind of person you are, which is equally a very important part of self-intro. Then the next thing is about your qualification, educational qualification, or your SIP, or your work experience. Now I would say that the candidate should use some kind of apply some amount of prudence here and decide on his or her own as to which is the most important thing when it comes to convincing the recruiter. Is it the work experience that you hold, or the SIP, or the educational qualification? So if in case you don't don't have any work experience, so I suggest that you start with your SIP, because SIP happens to be the core of the whole thing, and they want to know more about what you have done. So generally what students do is they repeat the same information that they have mentioned in their resume, and then the immediate answer to that is the recruiter say, oh, don't repeat this thing, this is already mentioned in your resume, so tell me something that is not there. In that case, you should talk about, first of all, SIP, the topic and all, it's already there in the resume, so talk about what you have done in the SIP. Then how did you do that? You talk about the methodology, the actions taken by you in order to implement that particular action, or in order to execute the task that was assigned to you. And the most important thing in the whole SIP thing is, what did you learn? So learning should be concrete and very clear in the mind of the candidate. So if you can talk about your SIP in a very strong, compelling and convincing manner, then that is definitely going to set you apart from other candidates. Then the next important thing is your educational qualification. Again, what many students do is, when they talk about their educational qualification, they only talk about the fact that I did my PGDM from this institution, this was the CGPA, I did my graduation from this university, and this was the score. But it is very repetitive because it's already there in the resume. So what the recruiters are expecting to hear from you is, as a student of that particular program, what have you learned? What knowledge base did you develop over a period of time? What kind of skill sets did you hone? And how did what kind of experience did you gain throughout the process? So if you can focus on these three things, knowledge, experience and skills, if you can focus on these things while talking about your educational qualification, then that will always help you in convincing your recruiter and in framing a very appropriate answer to the question, tell me something about yourself. Then the next part could be, you can talk about your achievements, because achievements is something that is very, very powerful and that makes your case very compelling. So achievements, you talk about achievements, but make sure that you talk about achievements which are really relevant, which you have achieved or maybe in the last few years. But don't talk about an achievement which is very outdated and obsolete, and you did it something 15 years ago and you said that when I was in school I won a certificate of this sort. So achievements have to sound like achievements. So it could be a very trivial one, but then it should sound like you have really earned it, and it really has a value add when you talk about that job description, or when you talk about you being a contributor to any organization. So these are some very, very important things which should be included in your self-introduction. Next very important thing is, your hobbies. Sometimes students get confused as to what kind of hobby should we talk about. Again, I think hobbies are something, there's a difference between a hobby and a leisure time activity. So if you are quoting an activity as your hobby, you need to know everything about that activity. And also, I think how that hobby helps you to really build up yourself. Maybe it could act as a de-stress activity. It could give you more happiness. So I think, how does that hobby help you? I think that is also very, very important. So these are some very important things which need to be kept in mind while framing an answer to the question, tell me something about yourself. I'm just going to give you some do's and don'ts, so that before you start framing the answer to this question, you can be ready. Number one, be thorough with all that you have done. I think before you start to draft, before you start drafting your self-introduction, you prepare a reservoir of the information. Reflect as much as you can. Talk to people who are close to you. Talk to your mentor, your teacher, your parents. They are the ones who will tell you your real strengths, your qualities, and then reflect on it, and then try to create a reservoir of information. Once you have the reservoir of information ready with you, it will help you in drafting a very, very professional introduction for yourself. Next is certain don'ts. So I think first thing which the recruiters expect from freshers is, why freshers? No organization has got that much of patience to really invest in freshers, but I think why organizations prefer freshers is because they want to recruit fresh blood, because they bring in more dynamism, they bring in more energy, they bring in a lot of new things in the organization. So always ask this question, what is that new thing that I'm going to bring with me to the table, because that is something which is really desired by all the recruiters. Secondly, lack of accountability is something which the recruiters don't like. If you have done something, or if you, whenever you're appearing for the interview, show that you're responsible, you're committed, and you're accountable. That is something which everybody desires. Next is lack of preparation. Again, is a big no. So don't just go for an interview without any preparation, without reading the JD properly, without reading about the organization properly. Don't just appear for the sake of appearing. Appear because you have passion and you want to work for that organization. So that point should always be at the back of your mind. Then the next very important thing is your communication. Communication should be perfect. But when I say communication, it doesn't mean that it has to be only English language. There are times you might get stuck with certain expressions. Feel free to express yourself in Hindi also. If you feel that you're not comfortable, you are not able to express your point of view in English. However, that should not really discourage you from learning to be more proficient in English language. Secondly, when we talk about communication, body language is something that everybody wants, and body language is the most important thing in communication, because 93% of your communication happens non-verbally. So how you sit in the interview, how you're using your hands, your facial expressions, your confidence, your eye contact, all these things are very, very important in a job interview, and especially when you answer the question, tell me something about yourself. So I hope that the point shared by me would come handy to you when you start drafting this answer. That's all. Thank you.